Hi, I'm Detective Incognito. Welcome to another investigation. I explore strange events, forgotten discoveries, and questions that still challenge what we know about our world. What you're about to hear might change the way you see everything. On October 18, 2019, scientists gathered in New York to simulate a coronavirus pandemic. They role-played global responses to a novel pathogen, spreading from animals to humans. They predicted travel restrictions that wouldn't work, a desperate scramble for vaccines, and 65 million deaths within 18 months. 8 weeks later, the first cases of COVID-19 appeared in China. The simulation seemed impossibly prescient. Subscribe now to understand how simulations reveal patterns that help us see what's coming, and why scientific modeling isn't prophecy but preparation. Like this video if you want to know why experts saw this coming, long before the rest of us realized something had changed. Event 201 took place at a hotel in New York City. On October 18, 2019, Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security partnered with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to conduct a pandemic preparedness exercise. Tom Inglesby, director of the Center for Health Security, and Eric Toner, a senior scholar, led the simulation. 15 leaders from business, government, and public health sectors participated. The roster included Professor George F. Gao, then Director General of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Avril Haines, former Deputy National Security Advisor, Adrian Thomas from Johnson & Johnson, Sophia Borges representing the UN Foundation, and Latoya Abbott from Marriott International. The scenario they confronted involved a novel zoonotic coronavirus that jumped from bats to pigs to humans. They called it CAPS, modeling it on SARS but making it more transmissible through mild symptoms that allowed infected individuals to spread disease before realizing they were sick. The simulation placed the outbreak's origin in Brazil, spreading through global travel networks. It predicted no vaccine would be available for at least a year. Participants watched pre-recorded news broadcasts describing the unfolding crisis, received live briefings from simulated health officials, and engaged in moderated discussions about policy responses. The exercise identified critical gaps in pandemic preparedness infrastructure. By the simulation's conclusion, the fictional CAPS virus had killed 65 million people globally. Within 18 months, economic systems had collapsed under the strain of simultaneous supply chain disruptions and demand shocks. The organizers released a statement, emphasizing that a global pandemic of severe respiratory illness was only a matter of time. They argued the question wasn't if but when such an event would occur. 2 months after Event 201 concluded, December 2019 brought the first documented cases of COVID-19 in Wuhan, China. The similarities between simulation and reality became impossible to ignore. Both involve coronaviruses, the same viral family as SARS and MERS. Both spread primarily through respiratory transmission, with mild cases facilitating wider contagion than severe outbreaks. Travel bans were implemented globally, just as the simulation predicted they would be. And just as the simulation suggested, these bans proved porous and ineffective at containing spread. The vaccine scramble unfolded exactly as modeled, with nations competing for limited supplies, while trying to accelerate development timelines. Economic disruption cascaded across sectors. In patterns the simulation had explored, misinformation spread alongside the virus, exactly as Event 201 participants had anticipated. Medical equipment shortages materialized. Hospitals exceeded capacity. Federal and state authorities clashed over jurisdiction and response strategies, particularly in the United States. Yet the simulation hadn't predicted everything. Diagnostic testing shortfalls caught health systems unprepared, in ways the exercise hadn't explored. Specific political responses varied wildly from the simulated discussions. And critically, while Event 201 placed the outbreak's origin in Brazil, COVID-19 emerged from China. Johns Hopkins issued clarifications emphasizing that Event 201 was not a prediction of COVID-19 specifically. It was designed to highlight preparedness challenges that would emerge during any severe pandemic. Tom Inglesby stressed that pandemic exercises show what could happen, not what will happen. Event 201 represented the latest in a long series of pandemic preparedness exercises, stretching back decades. In 2001, Dark Winter simulated a smallpox bioterrorism attack on the United States, conducted in the heightened security environment following September 11th. The exercise revealed systematic failures in federal-state coordination, hospital capacity, and vaccine distribution. Congressional action followed, with increased funding for biodefense and public health infrastructure. Atlantic Storm in 2005 tested international cooperation mechanisms during a fictional pandemic, exposing communication gaps between nations. Clade X in 2018 examined responses to a hybrid virus, combining characteristics of parainfluenza and Nipah virus. Across 2 decades of exercises, consistent patterns emerged. Travel bans implemented during crises prove ineffective at containing spread. Coordination between government levels fails under pressure. Misinformation proliferates faster than accurate information. Medical supply chains break down. Every simulation identified the same systemic vulnerabilities. The United Kingdom conducted Exercise Winter Willow. European nations ran simulations for foot and mouth disease outbreaks. Each exercise reached similar conclusions. Preparedness remained inadequate, despite mounting evidence of inevitable future pandemics. Tom Frieden, former CDC director, summarized the paradox. Deadly pandemics are inevitable. Being unprepared is not, yet preparation consistently lagged behind scientific warnings. The question emerged repeatedly: if experts knew these patterns, why weren't systems in place to address them? The answer revealed a fundamental disconnect between scientific understanding and political will. Pandemic simulations function as scenario-based learning for policymakers who might never have experienced genuine crisis decision-making. These exercises don't teach technical protocols. They provide practice in high-level decision-making under ambiguous, rapidly evolving conditions. The value lies in helping leaders understand how dynamic real-world crises differ from theoretical planning. But simulations can't predict political variables that often determine response effectiveness. Event 201's recommendations were released in January 2020, too late to implement before COVID-19 spread globally. Vietnam, not highly ranked in preparedness indices, executed swift and effective responses. The United States, ranked first in preparedness, struggled with coordination and implementation. The gap between simulation insights and practical implementation remained vast. Researchers continue debating whether simulations actually change institutional behavior. Studies indicate awareness doesn't automatically translate to action. Without sustained political commitment and funding, Event 201 highlighted that public-private partnerships would be critical during pandemics. Yet when COVID-19 arrived, those partnerships largely didn't exist. In functional form, the simulations revealed systemic weaknesses clearly, but fixing systems requires sustained investment and political will that often evaporates when immediate crises fade. Event 201 didn't predict COVID-19. It predicted pandemic patterns, based on decades of epidemiological evidence and historical analysis. Coronaviruses were recognized as significant pandemic risks since SARS emerged in 2003. MERS in 2012 reinforced concerns about coronavirus potential. Scientists didn't possess secret knowledge. They possessed expertise in recognizing how infectious diseases behave when they encounter modern global transportation networks and interconnected economies. The difference between prophecy and probability is crucial. Simulations work because pandemics follow predictable patterns, regardless of specific pathogens. Travel facilitates spread. Medical supplies run short. International cooperation fails under pressure. These aren't mysteries requiring supernatural explanation. They're documented patterns from historical pandemics, including the 1918 influenza, SARS, and MERS. The timing of Event 201 appearing eerily prescient 2 months before COVID-19 emerged reflects not conspiracy, but scientific literacy about ongoing risks. Experts understood that pandemic emergence was probable within any given time frame. The next pandemic is also predictable in broad strokes. It will likely involve a respiratory pathogen. It will spread through global travel. Supplies will be insufficient initially. Coordination will prove challenging. These patterns will repeat because they reflect fundamental characteristics of how diseases, humans, and institutions interact. Researchers emphasize we know what will happen in general terms. The question is whether we'll prepare adequately. This isn't about conspiracy or hidden agendas. It's epidemiology applied to preparedness planning. More simulations are occurring now. For future pandemic threats, monkeypox outbreaks, and antimicrobial resistance scenarios. The simulation didn't predict the future. It revealed patterns we've witnessed before, and will witness again. The question isn't whether scientists knew. It's whether we'll finally listen. When they tell us what's coming and what we need to do, science can show us what's coming, based on evidence and historical patterns. Only we can decide if we're ready to act on that knowledge before the next crisis arrives. If you liked what you just saw, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. Leave your opinion in the comments below to let me know what you thought. Thanks for sticking around, and see you in the next video.